This week, we're diving into a topic that affects many young athletes: why kids quit sports. Is it about burnout, lack of interest, or something deeper like bullying or confidence issues? We'll get into it after I hit this music. Joining me this week is a martial arts instructor, Rich Borges. Rich, thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
So, Rich, how long have you been studying martial arts for, and how long have you been teaching as well?
Oh, geez. So about a little over 30 years now, I've been training in martial arts, and I actually started teaching really young. So probably, I'd say 26, 27 of those years I've been teaching.
Yeah, same here. I was studying martial arts. That'd be my 31 years this year. So 1994, I started. I started teaching when I was 16 years old, back when we had our leadership program back in the day. So back when I got my blue belt, back then it was a requirement. You had to be a certain high rank in order to become in the leadership team. But now these days, at least in my school, you got to be like a yellow belt, second rank in to start learning the leadership qualities. But yeah, interesting times back then.
Yeah,
So,
I'll say real quick, just so, my dad's actually the one that threw me into it because I was taking two styles at once. So I was doing
wow.
the karate and I took Aikido, and my dad's like, you know what? You're going to do on Saturday mornings, you're going to teach what you learned in Aikido Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So I had to take 6 hours of training and do it in a 1 hour class, not knowing, how to teach it all. But it was great because as as you teach, you'll learn better. And that was kind of his whole goal for me to do that.
Yeah, like one thing, speaking of learning better, is I don't have a lot of black belts in my school. So when I have to teach black belt forms, it's like, oh man, I have to go back and study some of these forms. It's been years since I've, done these forms. But anyways, Rich, as a school owner yourself and as myself, every now and then we get these kids who I feel they're like superstars. And then I see them just quit. Now, to myself, I think, well, there's no way they're getting bullied in my school. And usually it's what happened when I think back on it. Sometimes the parents cause them to quit from yelling at them from the sidelines, like, you need to focus better. Are kids quitting sports due to bullying, or are there other issues that could be causing them to quit sports? As an instructor yourself who works with kids, what have you been seeing?
Yeah, I mean, definitely bullying has a lot to do with it. But I actually, it's funny. The number one reason, based on the research I've looked at, is not so much of them like losing interest or being lazy, because that's usually what I get from a lot of parents that pull their kids out. Like, oh, they're just not interested anymore. Or they're too lazy. It starts being fun for them. But fun is different for kids than it is for adults, right?
Yeah.
So, fun for kids is, do they feel like they belong? You know, do they feel included? Are they having like positive interactions with everybody? And then, coaches, teammates, and everything. So that can lead to I think, the reasons why they quit is more so, are they having that fun?
That fun. And you brought up a good point. Fun is different to them, what we may think of fun. And a lot of it could be maybe there's stuff going on that we're not seeing in class. Because, even though we may have helpers on the floor, at least, so I'm talking from a martial arts perspective because I don't coach anything else. I don't know if you coach either, but as for myself, I've had kids quit because I've heard that excuse a lot of time, because I'm not having fun anymore. Is it their peers? Are they saying things behind their backs that maybe it's not getting back to me? You raised a good point, which I just didn't think of until now. So when a kid tells you that they're quitting because they're not having any fun anymore, do you dive deeper into that to find out what's going on?
Yeah, I always do. And it's usually the parent that comes to me and tells me why. So then I always like to try to talk to the kid. I appreciate parents that bring kids in and not just quit and leave, because that
Yeah.
happens a lot too. Because usually they're embarrassed, right? They want to make, their coaches, their instructors, they want them to feel proud. So like, for them to leave, they know they're disappointing us, right?
Yeah.
Because we have that influence on them. So I'm always digging a little bit deeper. I says, what is it that you don't like about classes anymore? Or if you're doing the sports, like, and sometimes they can't answer it. So it's
Yeah.
like you said, is like catching those subtle ways of why it's happening before the little
Yeah.
things. Bullying is blatant, right? So if we talk about that, but there's that subtle bullying too.
Yeah. There's that's all the ones that I've seen is that where they kind of ignore the kid. It's they don't really have to say anything. They just ignore them, and you can tell they're ignoring them because they won't look at them. They'll walk away, or they'll do something different. It's like, dude, he's right there. Um, Usually if I see that, I address that right away. But you brought up, I'm still going back to that thing, not funny anymore. I was like, man, that's a good point. Cause I hear that a lot. And I'm gonna dig
Yeah.
into that now more myself. As far as kids joining your school, I've had kids who they're like gifted athletes. They played sports. They come to my school and they're really good. It's like, why'd you quit this? And it's because they were bullied and the coach wouldn't do anything about it. Have you had any, before I get into my story with that, I'll let you go first. Did you have any experience with kids coming to you because of that?
Quite often, actually, a lot of kids, parents like, well, they're getting bullied at school or they're getting bullied at sports, and here's martial arts because we've heard martial arts helps with bullying. But they always think of it in the way of like, well, obviously, the fighting, right? Because martial arts is, defending yourself. But I kind of want to go back to that subtle bullying where it's like these kids, sometimes it's, they're being excluded from the team activities, right? Or they're getting blamed for a loss. So you like those high level athletes that you have, they usually do really well and they do one bad play. Now, maybe the whole team is blaming, that's bullying, right? Like the whole team is blaming one action that child did. So when they experience this, their motivation, their self-worth, it takes a huge hit. And that's
Yeah.
why I think parents look for martial arts to help build that confidence back up again.
Yeah. Um, how does bullying impact a child's decision to continue or quit a sport?
Yeah, so I mean, like along those lines, I think it's the same thing as like they feel unsafe and unsupported. So, if the teammates are not feeling like they're included or they're being bullied, why would you want to come back to that? It's just like an
Yeah.
adult. You're not going to continue, well, I should say relationships, right? Some people they
Yeah.
stay in that relationship even though it's not good for them, but it's like, why would you go back, you know,
Yeah.
to that?
So my theory with this one young man who joined my school, this was a couple years ago. So they told the coach, but the problem was the people who are doing the bullying are like the best players on the team. So the parents felt like because of that, they didn't want to risk losing the best players on the team or having them sit out or whatever the punishment it was. They didn't want to risk that. They just said, they ignored it. And basically how they said, their problem took care of itself. They quit, which is totally unfair for kids to have to experience. You know, I get it, coach. You get coaches. You want your team to win. You got some best players. You can't lose a teammate, but there's also got to be there's got to be some respect involved. If you're gonna have a good athlete, if they're a crappy teammate, I mean, do you really want them on your team? I always kind of refer to as I'm a Minnesota Vikings fan, and we've had some players who are like really good extreme athletes, but their attitude just sucks. It's like, bye, happy to see you gone.
I
You
mean,
know?
it starts at the top, right? If the
Yeah,
coaches aren't enforcing that for everybody, then that's what happens. And those kids who aren't the top, or even athletes, they're not going to want to stick around. You know,
yeah. So what are your thoughts versus martial arts? For martial arts, I guess there are some tryouts. I do know some schools host like if you want to be on the demo team, you got to try out. And the same thing with sports. You want to be on, varsity, you have to try out to be on varsity. But what happens to the child's confidence if they don't make it to that team? Is it a good thing we have society where you have to try out to play on a team, or is it doing more damage than what it should be
yeah,
doing?
it's a great question. I think in general, to be on a team, no, but when you have the higher level teams, yes. Because I believe that you still want those kids who try really hard in practice to have something above, not, all right, everyone's just going to get on, right? It's kind of that mentality. And I've struggled with instructors with like karate tournaments and giving trophies out to everybody and stuff like that.
Yeah,
We actually had somebody on our circuit that said they called it a courage award, which I thought was pretty neat because it does take a lot of courage to step on the mat, right? When you're competing and doing that. But that's a little bit more of an individual sport. So it's different. But team wise, yeah, I mean, high level teams, you're not going to get on varsity unless you're good. So should every kid be on varsity?
so we also have teams like we have high school makes sense because that's where scholarships get through. But we also have those programs that don't. There's no varsity you play in the summertime as well. You got to try out to be on that team. And from what I hear from some parents is, well, if they could afford the extra training, their child would be good enough. So sometimes people can feel like they're being excluded because their kids trying their best, they just can't afford the best, teaching. It's kind of like a mixed feelings. I'm kind of mixed in this topic because kids who work hard should, if they work hard, they prove themselves, they should be on the best team. I get it, it's a sport. But for varsity high school, I get that more. But for like, I can't remember what those teams are, but we have like those summer teams where it's just a summer. It's not going anywhere. It's just kids playing sports. But what really drives me kind of crazy, this is my personal thought. If you're in a martial arts school, why do schools make you compete to be on a demo team? I'm not sure if you do that at all. I can understand if you have like 100 kids and you need to be like, okay, I only got room for like 25.
Right. Right.
But here's what I need. I need someone who can do this, this, and this. I need someone in each rank group. But there's some schools who are like, well, you got to be good enough. If you're not good enough, you can't be on this demo team. So I guess, what are your thoughts for an individual sport as martial arts? Should that be a requirement as well? Or is this kind of part of, life lessons? Like, you got to work hard to get what you want.
So, and again, it depends on the situation. A demo team, if you're competing and you're at events and stuff, it's like, higher level, right? If it's a demo team to go out and, go in the community, stuff like that, I'd rather see kids that are like white belts and not that good. Because then you parents looking at like, oh, but that's my kid. They want them.
Yeah.
They don't want to see the high flying. I mean, it's fun. Don't get me wrong, but they want to see people like themselves. But when it comes to competition, I mean, I could see that it goes both ways. It'd be great to just give some kids an opportunity to go out there and do it and learn from it. And then you have your high level where it's tough to compete with if they're high flying and doing backflips when the other kid can't do that. Like our school, we're very traditional martial art. We don't do a lot of the creative stuff. We do more of the traditional, and our demo team actually did really well. And the way we did that is I selected students, not because they were the best, just because, they showed the best attitude. Right.
Yes.
Because you can train that. Yep. You can do that. So that's kind of what I look for versus the, performance wise.
Yeah. So going back to like the other sports besides martial arts, any advice for coaches, how they could prevent or handle bullying when you get these kids who are quitting because of that? And these coaches are afraid to lose that athlete who's the one responsible for doing the bullying.
Yeah. It's funny because I think in martial arts, we do so much of the combating bullying and preventing it. And we forget that a lot of sports just ignore it sometimes, unless it's in their face. So it starts with being proactive. A lot of times it's reactive. They wait for the bullying to happen, and then let's try to fix it if we have to, right? So as an instructor from day one, we set those expectations right off the bat. If the coaches do that too, it helps. Let them know that it's not tolerated. Having fun stuff outside of the team practices, like just any like extracurricular team building activities. If the kids are having fun off the field, they're less likely to turn on each other, right? Because now it's not just them being competitive with the sport; they're getting to know each other as friends.
Yeah. So going back, saying those expectations. As a coach, you're watching your team practice and you see two kids kind of goofing around. Like you got one kid's, goofing around more than the other kid does, and you don't really quite know the full situation. Do you step in and ask them what's going on? Do you let them play it out? Because I know a lot of kids, there's parents that came to me where their own kids are being accused of bullying and they weren't bullied at all. That kid could have just been rude. So I think, is there a thing a coach can do to recognize what truly is bullying, what's goofing around, and not jump the gun on some of this stuff? Some people can say anything's bullying. Well, it bullied my kid for doing that. Like, I don't know.
You're right. A lot of people have that misconception of what actually bullying is. And it's the constant, right? It's not the one time. Like I said something mean to you right now. It doesn't mean I'm bullying you. I was just mean to you at that time.
Yeah.
And then it also depends on their age, because especially the younger kids, if we're looking at, 5, 6, even 7, 9-year-olds, they're figuring out how to play with each other still.
Yeah.
So they need help on learning what and what not to do. So they're either going to copy what they see, or they're going to get some input from the coaches. So the coaches just being proactive and going out there and having communication with them, I think is super helpful. So I think a lot of people just overthink it. Kind of like you said, like, do I step in? Do I just have a conversation? Like, hey guys, what's going on here? Oh, and the kids are going to talk, and then you can help them react appropriately.
Yeah. And ages is a very good point to make there. I have a daughter who's in kindergarten, and every day she tells you something that's about a certain kid. this kid did this kid did that. I'm like, my goodness, what's going on with this kid? Why is this kid still in class? But it's like, it's they're kindergartners. Not saying that what he's doing all the time should be allowed, but yeah, they're playing, they're testing their kids will test boundaries to see how far they can go because they're curious. They want to know, can they do this? And if you're a parent at home that swears a lot in the house, well, don't be shocked if your kids at school or on the football field or whatever, when they mess up, they swear on the field as well. Or it also depends how you treat your spouse too. Do you get upset at your spouse really easily? Does your kids see that? If your kid sees that, you might see that on the field as well. Your kid's getting upset at his teammates, lousy call, lousy play. Are there any? Go ahead.
Kids are learning how to be human beings, and they have to learn it from somewhere.
Yeah.
So it's either going to be at home, like you said, from parents, other siblings. They're going to learn it from their friends. They're going to learn it from TV show, like all of that. So they're learning it somewhere. So we're trying to make sure that we not keep them in the bubble, but like appropriately explain stuff to them.
Yeah. I'm not familiar with your area where you're at in this part of the country, but is there like a certain age group where mostly kids experience their bullying, like in sports? Is there like a certain age of the youth, like the younger kids, or it's like the high schoolers or the in between middle schoolers? Do you see it? You ever see it where it's most prevalent?
Age is not. I mean, in general, I think everybody when you get to that like teenager, that that's socially, you got to be socially cool. But where I see it the most is kind of like a transition. So it's like if a kid's moving from recreational sports to like competitive league, that's where the bullying starts happening. Because now it's not like, hey, we're just having fun playing. We're competing. We're getting more. So that's where that dynamic and the pressure shifts a little bit.
Yeah.
A lot of times I'll see it like, so team sports, right? So soccer, basketball, hockey, dynamics can be really strong between friends that have been doing it for a long time, and then like a new kid comes in, right? So that's kind of where that bullying starts, where they create their cliques, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Because if you're playing like those YMCA programs, it's just out there to have fun. My daughter would do that and just pick dandelions on the soccer field. She didn't go any further than that. But it does make sense. You get these kids who do it for fun activity. Now they're going into like the high school sports where okay, now it starts meaning something because there's, could be scholarships on the line. Yes, that makes perfect sense because you have kids who like, I want to win. And we got those kids who could just be goofing around still because they're just there to have fun, which, don't get me wrong, I think that's fine. Sometimes, bullying on sports could be a two-way street. If your child comes in there and just goofs around the whole time and makes the rest of the team, brings their team down, don't be shocked someone's going to speak at your kid. It's probably going to happen. As parents, we got to teach our kids, okay, if you really want to do the sport, you really want to play baseball, you're going to need to go to bed at this time. You're going to need to eat healthy. You're going to need to act this way because these kids are serious. I'm not sure how to say this because I never had a kid where I actually had to say this to. So I'm just shooting off the top of my head. I have all daughters, and my kids, they're little yet.
Yeah, you're pretty spot on because it is what happens, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you got to be serious. And I hear it in the hallway too when the parents are talking to each other, or when I have communication with parents, like, because they're always like, oh, they're also doing soccer, but this is happening this way. So yeah, it's all the same. Individual sports, team sports, it happens everywhere. It's just a little different for each one.
Yeah. So I've had this one girl, she was phenomenal at martial arts until she had blue belt. And blue belt, we started doing the jump spin kicks. And once she got to that level, it didn't become fun anymore for her because it was way too hard. She wasn't gifted on it anymore. And I was like heartbroken when she quit because I was like, man, if she could just work with me a little bit longer, she'll get this kicks down. And, once you can do these jump spin kicks, the rest of the kicks are actually pretty easy to learn. You just got to learn the dynamic of it. But her parents said it wasn't fun anymore. She didn't want to do it anymore. Any advice for those parents, and maybe for myself now, because that happened to me once before. How do you keep that kid's confidence up? Because I'm pretty sure that's not the first time she's ever quit a sport. It seems like when it gets hard, they're done. It's like, any advice we can talk to our kids about perseverance when things are getting hard, stick with it.
You know, and I wish I didn't have this conversation so often with
Yeah.
everybody, but it's kids have to believe in their ability to improve. So if they're quitting, right? I mean, we're talking about quitting sports.
Yep.
If they're quitting before they can, like a challenge hits them and they quit, they don't learn to push through it, they're not going to build that confidence. So they're going to hold back and they're going to be afraid to make mistakes. Now, I've seen it too, where a kid will come in the class, like learn a new like jump kick or something, and they don't do well with it. And then the parents in the hallway, like, oh man, you got to practice more. Like that was terrible. Like, how are you helping your child get better if every time they make a mistake, that's the impact they're getting? Right.
Yeah.
This is why we talk about positive reinforcement. Now, it doesn't mean just, oh, you did great effort. That's not what we're talking about, right? We want to be
Yeah.
specific. Like, hey, I always praise the effort. The other day I heard an instructor say, hey, you're so smart for doing that. I said, no, don't say that. And the reason you don't say that is because now they're always thinking, well, if I don't do something, I'm not smart anymore.
Yeah.
So you always praise that effort so they can help build that confidence. Because if they're always hearing that criticism, parents, coaches, or teammates, it reinforces that self-doubt. So we need them to be able to push through that. I don't know if that kind of answered your question. I know it kind
No,
of.
that makes a lot of sense because I feel a lot of kids, at least who quit my program, it's parent influenced. I had a kid who, so for my school, blue belt's a very big deal. It's your first belt in advanced rank. You got 2 more years to go to black belt. And we learn a lot of new stuff. You learn your jump spin kicks. We also start learning how to make contact with our sparring. So the first couple of years, first we teach about holding hands up, eyes up. We do semi-sparring, no contact. And then we do target sparring where one person would be in a fighting stance, so hold targets up, which is supposed to signify as, oh, you see an opening, how are you going to react to that? And then we start teaching kids, okay, now let's put it all together and let's try it on each other. So this one kid, he made it like 3 weeks and his mom was the one that got upset. This is too hard. This is too sloppy. I just see kids hitting each other. My son got kicked in the arm and his arm got bruised. And for his last day, I didn't know his last day, but for his last day in class, I pretty much held his hand while he was sparring. And that was still too much. I feel like sometimes parents, like there's one guy in my podcast called that lawnmower parents, they keep chopping down the expectations. So if that's too hard, let's lower the expectations. That's too hard, lower it. They keep lowering the expectations so it can please the kid. And I was just like, I kind of took a little personal for that one. I was like, man, your kid spent 2 years with me, just started learning a new skill, and you pulled him out because it was too hard. And like the mom and like was telling him, well, they shouldn't be hitting you that hard. It's like, dude, you barely got hit. And I just like was shocked, like, really? So
Well,
I don't know. Do you have any parents like that where you kind of feel like it was parents influenced?
I mean, that mostly happens because of that. And again, from a parent's eyes, everything's going to be magnified. So,
Yeah.
for example, a karate tournament, if a parent goes in there like, well, my child didn't get a fair shake in that ring, the judges were doing, I mean, honestly, most of the time when I review because I always tell them to tape it so I can review it. And then I give them input and then they're like, oh, because they're so focused on their child, they don't see any, it's those blinders. They don't see anything else happening. So it's the same thing in the class. They're focusing on their child not doing well with those spin kick, jump kicks, whatever it is, but they're not watching the rest of the kids who are also might be struggling because they're at the same level. So when you bring that to attention and just say, hey, yeah, this is pretty hard now. We're doing a next level, but this is the process and this is how we get to it. You don't, if you're playing soccer, you don't start kicking goals. You got to learn how to use the ball first. Like, how do I control the ball before I get it in the net?
Yeah.
It's not any different from martial art. And there's so much in martial arts, right? You're learning all kinds of things. And it sounds like, the way your system's set up is, it's a progression. You got to learn how to hit a pad before you can hit a person. You just throw them in there. All right, let's just start sparring. That's not kind of how you learn how to do this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not like those other sports like Muay Thai or Jiu Jitsu where you have to go in there and start doing it. I think that's how they do. I mean, I can't speak I'm not an expert in any of those stuff. I just learned my Taekwondo.
Well, there's still, because I did kickboxing for a while, and that the object is to go in there and hit somebody else. But we still had to learn how to do the techniques properly and hit the pads and build a stamina up. And all that started before we even started hitting someone else.
Okay. I think for me, a lot of it's parental influence. How much influence are you having on your child that wants to quit? Like you said earlier, it's not fun anymore. Are they getting yelled at from the sidelines? Um, are they chopping down the expectations? Rich, any advice for those anxious parents who are watching their kids struggle in class and they feel like they need to step in to soothe or calm their child down?
Yeah, patience. I mean, that's number one is patience. Let the coaches, let the instructors do their job. And then after, you can discuss it with the coaches, not during. Because if you're doing it during, you're interrupting what they're trying to do. Now, again, if the instructors or the coach is not doing a good job or it's getting violent or something's happening, that's different, right? But for the most part, these coaches and these instructors do a really good job. But having the conversation after can also help the coach or the instructor. Like, hey,
Yes.
my kid reacts better this way when this happens. But if you do it during it, now you're interrupting everything. And I think it makes it a lot harder for them to do their job. It's just like, if you were asked a parent, like whatever your job is, if your boss or your manager is interrupting you every time you're doing something, are you going to be able to get that done appropriately?
No.
No,
In fact, that would
absolutely
drive me
not.
nuts. That would drive me nuts.
It
That's actually
drives
one
any
reason
of us
why
nuts.
I work
Yeah.
for myself. I can't stand that.
It drives any of us nuts. So like just setting that expectation, I think for the parents, because they need to understand that and know that's helpful.
And if you have a child who, as a parent, you see your son, say for myself, because I see kids join my school because of this, they're they're good at football. They grew up football. They love football. They want to quit football all of a sudden. Any advice to keep those kids encouraged to try to play through the tough part? Sometimes it's just easier to say, okay, Johnny, we're going to move on to a different sport. And that's such a shame because they spent so much time.
Well, I think it's the parents a lot of times that give up too early, right? I mean, how many times have you heard a parent who, they're driving their kid to practice, like, I don't want to go, I don't feel like it, it's not fun anymore. And then eventually they give up. Or, I've had it the other day where a parent, I mean, this is a while ago, but the parent it said, um, it's like pulling them kicking and screaming to want to come and do karate now. I says,
Yeah.
but when they're here, they're laughing and they're like, because, I didn't see it. Like, they always have a good time. So one of the things I asked is like, what are they doing before they come? Like, well, they're playing on video games. I'm like, well, so you're pulling them away from something they're enjoying doing to go do something else they enjoy. But right now, that's the thing they want to do. Why would they want to go and change? So it's the same
Yeah.
thing with like, football or whatever that is, what are they doing before? Are we setting them up for that? Right. Or are we communicating with them? Like, what is it that you're not liking anymore? And if they can't really give you a good answer, it's probably just because of the timing's not right. Or maybe they don't get to eat after school and they're just rushing over there. Like that causes anxiety too for kids. So we got to really like kind
Yeah.
of figure out what it is.
And then as far as talking to the coach, so the kid doesn't want to play because he's being bullied. And it's true bullying. And the players that are doing the bullying are like well known, they're what's what I'm looking for, not superstars, they're popular. Any advice, parents, how they can address the coach in a nice way, not going out there barking at them to get that bullying to stop so their kid can feel safe and welcome? I feel like that's probably the hardest part for a parent to do because really the coach has the power and you're the parent.
Being honest, basically saying just that, like, hey, I know, John's a superstar and, he's one of the best players on the team, but his attitude is affecting all of the kids, because it probably is, all the kids on the team, or specifically my kid. Being honest with that, she says, he really enjoys playing football and he wants to continue doing that. And I think he can contribute. So if he's having a good time on the field and he's not being bullied, he'll probably get better at it, right? And help the team. And just, again, like being honest, I think is going to help with the coaches so they can kind of make an appropriate decision. It might work, it might not work, but
Yeah.
you know,
Well, Rich, I want to thank you for your time today. I think we covered quite a bit on different sides of this topic. In reality, our kids quitting sports doing bullying, not all the time. I don't think it's all the time. I think it's much deeper than that. I label this title because I want people to listen. Because, kids are quitting bullying, kids are quitting sports because of bullying. I want to hear more. It comes down to parenting influence, which I'm a parent of 5 kids, 3 are younger, 19 months old right now, 4-year-old and a 6-year-old. And I get it. It can be stressful. Rich, if people want to follow you or get a hold of you, do you have a website or social media?
Yeah, so social media, you can just look up Rich Borges, but website is borgesmartialarts.com. That's where I have two schools. And we have a team of instructors, and we also run a summer camp. But yeah, always available. I'm a part of Skills Worldwide too, so that's a great organization to look into for helping with parents. Like there's actual courses and teaching you what we do as instructors on the mat to use as well.
Yep, and people listening, you know where to find his website. It'll be in the show notes. And if you're watching on YouTube, you saw it go across your screen. Rich, I want to thank you for your time today.
All right, thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
And for myself, you can always find us at our very own website, which is www.breakingbullying.com. You can also reach out to us at our email address. If you have a story of your own bullying to share, or for whatever reason you want to get a hold of us, our email address is breakbullyinghere@gmail.com. If you're a victim of bullying and you don't know where to turn, there is online resources to help you. The first is the government's very own anti-bullying website, and the address is www.stopbullying.gov. If you have had thoughts of suicide or of self-harm, we implore you to stop. Reach out to the National Suicide Hotline. That number is very simple. It's 988. I'm Tim Flynn, and thank you for listening, and we will be back next week to continue the conversation to break the silence on bullying.